Hi, everyone. This is BVM Sports Chalk Talk. I'm Matt Morris with Scott Procter and Lucas Semb, and this week we're going to do a little recap of Week 10 in college football, and we're going to start with a Big Ten matchup, Michigan going into Indiana, and, just proving, I think, to everyone that the Harbaugh era in Michigan is close to being over. Michigan hadn't lost to Indiana since 1987. I wasn't born then. I don't think any of us were, and Indiana just won. And not only that, but this was the nail in the coffin for Michigan, and also the realization that Indiana is a very good team. I think a lot of people thought the Penn State game was, he didn't land. He didn't, stop the clock. He went in for the touchdown, gave him a chance in overtime. But this week, Indiana proved to a lot of people, including myself, that they're legit. They're a competitive team, and their quarterback Penix is impressive. I mean, he went 30 of 50 for 342 and 3 touchdowns. And then you had his main receiver, Fogel, go for 7 receptions, 142 yards, and he averaged 20.3 yards per reception. And also, this was just as much as I want to give a lot of credit to Indiana for playing a great game and being a good team. Michigan definitely could have done a lot better. They were horrible on defense, giving up 8 penalties for 89 yards, and a majority of those were, false starts and giving Indiana a bunch of free plays. They kept trying to do man coverage, and Indiana's wide receivers just blew them apart and allowed Penix to just pick them apart and find a matchup he liked, go after it. And not only that, but going into the game, Indiana was terrible on third down efficiency. This game, they were 9 of 18. They were 50% on third down conversions. And some of those conversions were from third and, long. I mean, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 11. And just momentum turning plays. And there was plenty of chances for Michigan to get back into this game, to step up, make a play either on defense or offense, and they just couldn't do it. So my takeaway is Indiana is here. We need to watch them and realize that they are a competitive team and they're going to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten. And Michigan is, I think they might have a few more good wins. They might be able to squeak out a win here or there, but they've already lost to Michigan State. I don't think they're never going to beat Ohio State this year. And if the Wisconsin game happens, I don't even think they'll beat Wisconsin, even though Wisconsin hasn't played a game in 2 weeks. So I think Harbaugh is going to be done after this season, and Michigan's going to have to be looking for a new head coach. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think, Matt, you were pretty spot on, man, there. Indiana beats Michigan for the first time since 1987. And the clock has run out on the Jim Harbaugh era, as far as I'm concerned. Jim Harbaugh has never beat Ohio State during his tenure. And now they lose to Michigan State, who just got 40-pieced by Iowa on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And now Indiana on back-to-back weeks. Jim Harbaugh needs to be held accountable. I'm not sure if it will happen this offseason, but, his position needs to be looked at just like every other coach, across sports. But, like you said, Matt, Michael Penix Jr., the Hoosiers quarterback, and this Indiana team is for real. And that should be the story here. What do you take from that, Lucas?
Yeah, I just think Michigan's always been, a perennial power, and they've been down the last, couple of years. It's not that they don't have the weapons. I just think that Harbaugh is an NFL coach, and coaching in these leagues is a lot different. You're only getting a handful of these players to go to the next level, and you coach them a different way than you would, in the NFL. And I just think that you can maximize people's talents in different ways at different levels. And I think he's just an NFL guy. He's had success at Michigan. He just hasn't really been able to get over the hump that their fan base probably expects them to get over. They've looked atrocious this year. Indiana, it's hard to believe, is good. Every time I think of Indiana, I think of their game against the Badgers where they lost like 81-3. And it's just something that, it's Indiana. You never think of them as a football school. And it's kind of turning that way. I think and both of you mentioned Michael Penix. I think he's elusive. He can pass it. He limits his turnovers. He's had 7 touchdowns through the air and 6 on the ground. He's just really leading a balanced attack for them. And they look legitimate. The Big Ten's kind of having a shift right now. It's Northwestern's 3-0. Indiana's good. Purdue's undefeated. Michigan State and Michigan, Iowa all falling off, and those teams have been ranked in recent years. So it's an interesting dynamic that we're seeing with the Big Ten.
Minnesota is always going to be questionable. Like, they got demolished by Michigan in that first game. But you're right, Luke. The Big Ten is so interesting. And without having, Wisconsin in the mix too, you can't even talk about Wisconsin this year, even though they looked great in that first game. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to be going up against Ohio State at the end of the season, especially if Wisconsin doesn't play this week. Then they won't be, eligible to contend for the Big Ten championship. So it gets interesting. I'm excited to see this new Big Ten where there's a kind of a changing of the guard. And Michigan State needs to work on a lot of stuff. Michigan is, there's 2 things that you have to do if you're at Michigan. You got to beat Michigan State, and you got to beat Ohio State. Harbaugh's been able to beat Michigan State. And losing to them this year was, that was it. Because you're not going to beat Ohio State, but if you can at least demolish Michigan State, win the state, you have a chance. But it did not look good, and this is the end of Jim Harbaugh. So, Scott, we're going to move on to your game and to look at your takeaways.
For sure. I think we're actually going to kick it out west and talk a little about BYU Boise. Is that right, Lucas?
Yeah, let's do it. So that was one of the games I wanted to talk about. BYU, Boise State last week. All the hype right now around Cougars QB, Zach Wilson. I'm not so sure about it. I know you guys are big fans, so we can talk about it a little bit. But my thing is that BYU doesn't really play anybody. And they played Boise the past couple of years, and that's usually their premier matchup. And that's only considered premier because Boise doesn't play anyone either. I mean, it's hard to get a good judgment of the guy when you're playing against, the majority of these teams don't have NFL players. And you're going to call someone a first-round pick in the NFL draft. I just think you need to reconsider that evaluation. However, the same thing could be said for Trey Lance out of NDSU. I mean, they're an FCS school. So, I mean, these scouts know what they're talking about. How do you guys feel about Zach Wilson?
To your point, though, Josh Allen was at Wyoming, going back to a conversation we had about Tua and the AFC East. These quarterbacks, if they're a good quarterback, you're a good quarterback. It doesn't matter where you came from. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl, and he played at Delaware. It's going to be interesting. I like Zach Wilson, and you're right, Luke, they don't play anyone. But when you don't play anyone, you need to beat teams and beat them badly. And BYU is beating everyone badly. So even if you're not playing anyone, at least play like you're not playing anyone. And they're playing like they're not playing anyone. They're destroying everyone. So I still am excited on BYU. And I think with this crazy season as it is, give a chance to somebody out of a Power 5. I want to see BYU in the college football playoff. I'd love that. And it gives Cincinnati a shot too.
I wouldn't like that because I think Wisconsin gets screwed every year. If you're going to put BYU in over Wisconsin, that's unbelievable. That's ridiculous.
Wisconsin does it to themselves, though. I mean, you can't go – you had every chance last year going to the Big Ten championship, and then you just get embarrassed by Ohio State. Like, I want Wisconsin to be great. I'm there. I'm totally in support of that. But they shoot themselves in the foot. So give it to BYU. Give it to somebody that at least would make it interesting, and it's a great storyline. I'm there for BYU. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, Matt. I'm of the mindset that you're right again on this topic. I like that you brought up the Joe Flacco's and Josh Allen to the world. I would add Carson Wentz, to that list as well from North Dakota State. But BYU football kind of got this train going this past weekend after the win, and I'm going to bring it to BVM Sports Chalk Talk, but Zach Wilson for Heisman. Yes, correct. He was 22 of 28, 6 incompletions on Saturday, 360 passing yards, and 4 total touchdowns. He needs to be in the conversation with Justin Fields and Trey Lance, as you mentioned, Matt, and a few other quarterbacks in that second tier of elite college football quarterbacks right behind Trevor Lawrence. Zach Wilson is currently tied for the nation's lead on passing touchdowns at 22. He leads all quarterbacks across college football in rushing touchdowns as well, with 8. And again, to Matt's point, there's something to be said for the fashion in which you get your wins. And they were just dominant against a top 25 team. Yes, it was Boise, but this is arguably their biggest game on the schedule, and they showed you on a national stage, what they can do, and specifically what Zach Wilson can do. 8-0 cannot be ignored no matter who you play or no matter what conference you play in. And neither can, Zach Wilson's Heisman chances. So, again, Zach Wilson for Heisman.
I mean, when you're playing against teams like Louisiana Tech and Troy, you better be dominating them.
Play your schedule.
You're a ranked team. But, for Heisman, that's a little – I don't know. I don't like it. It's going to be Justin Fields. It's going to be Justin Fields. It's going to be Justin Fields. There's no one that can compete with that.
So if Ohio State loses a game, if they end up with 1 loss, they don't make the playoff. Is he still a Heisman?
Yes. Ohio State plays a schedule. I'm going to go back to the point. Like you guys brought up Joe Flacco at Delaware and Josh Allen at Wyoming. If you go down the list, you're always going to find there's a few of those guys throughout history. That's just how it works out. But in the end, I'm going to try to make a comparison here. Steph Curry was at Davidson. Damian Lillard was at Weber State. And there was a reason those guys were at those schools, just straight up. Not everyone develops into players like Flacco and Allen, or, those are, once in a blue moon. So I think, sure. There's a reason he's at BYU. And if you want to take the chance on his development into an elite NFL prospect, then, be my guest. But
I'm making no assertions about Zach Wilson's possible NFL future. All I'm saying is right now, this season, he is a top 5 college football quarterback playing on an undefeated 8-0 top 15 team. And he deserves Heisman consideration, especially in a weird season where Trevor Lawrence has, caught COVID. He's not playing the full slate of games. Ohio State is not playing a full regular season slate of games. And Zach Wilson is doing everything he possibly can on a football field, on a great team, beating everybody who comes across his path thus far. And because of that, again, the passing touchdowns, leading the nation, the rushing touchdowns, leading all quarterbacks. He's making a Heisman case. And to ignore it just because, he plays for BYU, doesn't play, a SEC schedule, is pretty crazy in my eyes.
I think he'll be a finalist for the Heisman. I just don't think he's going to win it. My argument is more so that I don't think his success here is going to translate to the NFL. And that's why I'm not buying into it. I think he's a great quarterback or a great college quarterback. And a lot of guys are great college players and they just don't turn out in the NFL.
No doubt.
For whatever reason. I just think that's going to be the case.
You know what? There was a quarterback from BYU who lit up college football and did go on and win a Super Bowl. My man, Jim McMahon, was unbelievable at BYU. And then he went and, if injuries hadn't, affected his career the way that it did, and you probably get more than just that 85 Bears win. So I think Zach is going to be good. I think that you see that potential in him. And with the NFL, if we're going to – I am so in on a Heisman, Scott. I agree he needs to be in the conversation. And at this point, it'll basically come down to, can he be so good that you can't, just default? Because I think that a lot of people in college football tend to just default to the Power 5 guy. Whether it's Lawrence, whether it's Fields, you're going to default to them because it's, like you said, he's a Power 5 guy. He's playing against all this competition. I think that he's setting himself up to do it. If he keeps going lights out, I give it to him. I think that you have to give it to him. As far as the NFL goes, as much as you want to say that they're once in a blue moon, I agree with you on that. But a big part of that is where they go. What is the system that they're going into? Is he going to have some time to, develop more into that NFL-style quarterback that he might need to? Or is he going to get just thrown, to the wolves right away? So I'm not going to say that it won't translate to the NFL. I think that he has every possibility to translate to the NFL as any one of these other quarterbacks, to translate there. And to that matter, do you think Lawrence is going to do that well with the Jets? Like, is that going to translate, or is he going to turn into Darnold,
So, Matt, I understand your point, saying, a player turns into something based off the system they go into. But, I mean, when you look at Josh Allen, the Bills weren't anything until, he came in there and he kind of developed himself into a great player. And you look in different leagues, the Milwaukee Bucks, they weren't anything. I mean, they had one championship in their franchise. And Giannis comes in there. They weren't known for being a great developmental team. They were one of the worst teams in the league. And now the Bucks are a top contending team in the league. I mean, it just kind of depends on the player's work ethic. The coaches can only do so much. So, I mean, you have your opinions. I have mine. I just don't think Zach Wilson's it. And I guess we'll find out 10 years from now.
I'm excited to find out. But I'm gonna fight you on that Bills thing, because the Bills were great with Tyrod Taylor. Like, they weren't going to win a Super Bowl, but they were at least contending for playoffs, and they did contend for playoffs with Tyrod Taylor. That defense has been strong for a while. There were some offensive weapons when he got there, and they've continued to add pieces around Josh Allen. So my point isn't as much of, it's having, like a guy like Archie Manning with the New Orleans Saints when they were – I'm going to go back. Yeah, I'm going to go far back. If you have a great quarterback but you don't have any team around him, then you don't really know what you have. So I think that it matters. Obviously, that intrinsic stuff, Giannis being the, work hard person that he is, adds to all of it. But I definitely think that it matters where you draft this guy. The Kansas City Chiefs had a team and were a playoff team with Alex Smith before you got Pat Mahomes. Deshaun Watson came into, at the time, a decent Texans team that had a solid defense. They had DeAndre Hopkins, Tua Tagovailoa. He's got a decent team around him. These guys, they have success based on their given talents, but if you're put into a place where you're going to have success and it's amplified, the chances, it'll be interesting, and I think that's what could happen with Wilson.
No doubt. Sure. No doubt. We'll see. We'll stay out west to take a look at another matchup from this weekend. This one is from Saturday, as number 12 Oregon opened its Pac-12 season with the 35-14 win against visiting Stanford. As far as I'm concerned, with this one, Oregon got a home preseason game. The Ducks scored 28 unanswered points, after the Cardinal scored first. And Stanford's kicker missed 4 field goals in that matchup on Saturday night, and that was essentially the game. Cardinal were never able to recover. CJ Verdell is one of the best running backs in the country, the Ducks tailback, and Oregon is well coached by Mario Cristobal there. And in my opinion, they should win the Pac-12 North pretty handily. But I won't know if this team what this team's true potential is, and if they can be a college football playoff dark horse, until they can string together a couple wins and, hopefully, separate themselves in the Pac-12 North and the Pac-12 as a whole. What do you guys think about Oregon's, chances moving forward, or about the Pac-12's conference to send somebody to the playoff?
Sure, yeah. I think it's hard to get a say in the Pac-12. I'm not really a big Pac-12 guy personally. I think they're all offense, no defense. And it's a fun style of play to watch, but, football's a two-way game, and like anything is. And I just think it's hard to say because of that playing style, and they just opened up. But Oregon always impresses, and, I think they actually played some defense. Yeah, Stanford missed 4 kicks. And the kicker's got to do his job, but you got to give them a little bit of credit for making Stanford settle for the field goal attempt. They played defense. They had many four and outs for Stanford that they forced. And like I said, like you had mentioned, I really like CJ Verdell too. I think he can be a workhorse back. I think they're ranked 11 for a reason. Time will tell, but I definitely think they could be a dark horse playoff team.
I think the momentum they carried into the offseason after just shellacking the Badgers in that bowl game definitely has carried over to this season, even with all the questions. My issue with the Pac-12 is I'm like Luke. I'm not a big Pac-12 guy. And, I'm going to go back to, the BYU conversation. I mean, if you don't play anyone, how do we know? And I don't think they play anyone with the Pac-12. Stanford hasn't been solid for a while. You don't play USC this year. So the only other really ranked team that you would see in the Pac-12 you don't get to play against to really decide until the Pac-12 championship. You don't see them in the regular season. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, Washington State, UCLA, Oregon State, Cal, and Washington. None of those games, unless they just go out and destroy all of them, I'm not ready to put them over, teams like Alabama or Ohio State. Or honestly, at this point, after the loss, Notre Dame and Clemson are going to have to fight, to get into the playoff as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see a Pac-12 team come out because I just mentioned Big Ten, ACC, and SEC. I didn't even go into the Big 12. So I don't see the Pac-12 really getting anybody out of their conference and into the playoff.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
No, you got it, Lucas.
I just like Oregon's bowl history. They're in a lot of Rose Bowls and they win a lot of Rose Bowls. And they went through a stretch from like 15 to 17 where they lost 3 in a row. They lost the national championship game, but granted, they were there and they faced an unbelievable Ohio State team. They lost the Alamo Bowl in 2016, the Las Vegas Bowl in 17. But they're always, in a top bowl and they're always playing top teams in those and they usually perform. So I think, given that, I think they just have that kind of makeup to be playing in big games.
No, I don't disagree with you on that. I will say I think it's taken a while for them to get back from their, the Chip Kelly dominance that they had when they were, that national championship team with Marcus Mariota was terrifying. And the way that they ran that offense was electrifying. And you'd watch these guys blow past everyone. I just don't know if, overall they're going to have a strong enough schedule to justify them getting over one of these other top teams in a different conference.
Yeah. Cool.
Scott, any thoughts?
I think that should do it. Again, I don't anticipate a Pac-12 team making the college football playoff. That's obviously the big goal. I envision a Big Ten champion, perhaps 2 SEC teams. And then some type of combination of Clemson, Notre Dame, to be the Final Four standing. I just think the Pac-12 got into it too late, and I just don't think there's enough talent. Matt, you kind of glossed over that Pac-12 North, and outside of Oregon, there's just not much there. There's not going to be, a ton of, challenge coming from that North, and if you do slip up, if you're Oregon and lose to one of those teams, then your shots of a playoff appearance are certainly shot. So, they've got an uphill battle. I wouldn't rule it out. It really will come down to if they can look dominant up until and including a Pac-12 championship. Then and only then will we know, they can truly, make a playoff bid.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this has been BVM Sports Chalk Talk. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll talk to you, next week.